Well, hey all, and welcome back. And for today's review, I have the Zero Gravity Judge. Now, this is the re-release in a new color, and this one is called the Moonnight Judge. This is a kit that I missed out on before, and I've been regretting it ever since. When it first came out, the price was pretty good, but I wasn't sure about it. I sat too long, the price shot up at all the retailers, and then it was gone. So even if I was willing to pay twice of what it was going for, chances are it was pretty slim. But thanks to Shozy Store, they got this new version in, and they got it shipped to me quickly. But for the package, we have the illustration on the front. This is something that, to me, is really just awesome. I think this is one of the best-looking Gundam-inspired mechas I have ever seen. But on the side here, we can see a photograph of the mech, all its accessories, some notes about its parts. Now, this does have a metal frame, so you would kind of maybe compare this to a metal build Gundam. Same illustration on the side. And another photo on the side. So, and then finally on the back, same illustration used again. But overall, the packaging looks all right. Mine has a little bit of a ding on it from the post carrier kind of drop kicked it when they delivered it, but I think it's still intact. But anyway, let's get this out of the package and see if it's worthy of our collection. Now let's go ahead and check out what's in the packaging. So we've got this lovely illustrated manual with all the instructions on how to assemble it. It actually isn't like that many steps. We have some decals here, which I was actually kind of hoping they were pre-installed, but we should be able to handle this. And then a supplemental page. Now, I run this through Google Translate, and essentially saying that they've pre-adjusted some of the parts from the factory and made them the right size. So this sheet here is really not an issue. This kit has a large set of runners, most that are undergated. We have a variety of blues. We have multiple shades of gray. And lastly, we have white for the armor and a variety color for accents. Here you can also see the completed stand. And lastly, we have the frame in there. Now, there are these two handles that were inside the box. However, it feels like the blister is only meant to hold one, so I took them out so they wouldn't bang around too much and possibly damage the finish, which I don't know if that's the case, but it's better safe than sorry. Now, within the packaging, we have this lovely frame, which is a combination of die cast and plastic. It's already assembled, so assembling the robot will just be a matter of snapping on the armor. Now, just to go over a little bit of articulation, we have movement at the ankle there, rotation at the ankle, tilt at the ankle, toe movement, and whole foot movement. And then we have a double jointed knee, which goes up quite far. Without armor, rotation at the hip. We can go outside on the hip, go forward and backward. All this will change a little bit once we put the armor on there. You can also see some points here for where the armor will have some articulation on these ball joints. On the waist, we have rotation there. We have a bend and a large crunch, two different joints. We have butterfly at the shoulder. We have rotation of the shoulder. We have shoulder joint, rotation of the bicep, double jointed elbow, which this is very tight. So we'll want to be careful with that once we actually get the plastic armor on there. And we have what will rotate at the wrist as well as rotation pre-wrist. And then, of course, lastly, we'll have some neck articulation. All this will change once the armor's on there, but as you can see, it is a pretty good frame as is. That said, I'm going to get to building it, and then we'll see if it's worthy of our collection. Now, for comparison with the original release, I have these two pictures where you can see the difference between the two. For the most part, you can recreate a lot of the armor. The primary difference, though, is there are some lighter blue parts, like here on the backpack. The yellow has been replaced with a really nice gold-plated plastic, and the decals are different. Lastly, the other main difference is, rather than one melee weapon, we get two of the large melee weapon and metal shafts. A little bit of a heads up on the build. Always be aware that you're not cutting off a peg. Just go slow with this kit. There's not a lot to go wrong. You just have to be patient and sometimes look at the instructions multiple times and make sure they're correct. Some items are numbered wrong. Some are drawn wrong. This piece was actually drawn like this, but they mean this. I also want to show off panel lining. Other than sending some of the nubs left from the cuts, I panel lined a bit of the model. It doesn't necessarily need it, but it has so many great details in there. I just thought it would bring out some nice subtle changes. And here we have the final kit. And as you can see from all around, there's so many great angles and lines. It is such a well-designed kit. It is really hard to believe that something so dynamic and interesting came from kind of, in my opinion, a bland source material. And here you can see the original design, and they took a lot of liberties. They really took something that I'm not entirely in love with and made it a spectacular rendition. The only minor things I'd done is add some panel lining in some areas I thought would bring it out. All these little indentures in the white areas I used with gray, and then some of the darker grays and blues I had used some black to help bring out those details, so it didn't look like it was just a solid molded piece of plastic. I have not added a dull coat or any paint. This has a nice finish on the plastic and honestly doesn't really need it. Now, I've not applied the decals yet because I do prefer the lighter gray versions over the blue ones that came with this. However, I may add some later on, but I really don't know if it needs it. It just looks good as is. The biggest thing I appreciate about this kit is the amount of customization that comes with it. There are some sprues that actually have the exact same pieces in different colors, which gives you the ability to change out things like the forearm color, the calves, which we have here, as well as the little fin type at the top. We actually have a gold fin as well. But varying little things here, you can change areas, rather, so it's not just, the same design. You could add your own flair to it, and because of that, you don't even need to paint anything. You can just swap out a handful of parts and have your own version. Same thing with this. We have a gray version as well as a clear, which these parts don't stand out a whole lot, but it does give you an option for customization. And of course, we've retained most of the posability. Some areas are going to be tighter than others, and we've added some additional articulation because we have flaps here that can now move. These can move. These forearm pieces actually move a little bit. We have movement here on the front flaps of the shoulders, so we can rotate it. We have this area down here that moves with the foot. Toe area, we have this area here that moves. And we have a little bit of articulation in the backpack where things are connected here, as well as the ports that go in here. Now let's get into the accessory portion of this review. And actually there's parts of this that I'm really not happy with. I enjoyed building most of the kit, but these hands were very frustrating, and that is for a couple of reasons. One, the instructions were wrong, so you had to actually find the correct parts to fit together. And two, it was really difficult to get the knuckle portion onto the palm portion for certain hands. That said, we do have a variety of hands here. We've got the fists that are on him. We've got some open hands that are actually really good looking, and these are probably the easiest ones to assemble. And then we have some grippy hands for holding some weapons. And this hand is actually really similar, but what I do like about it is that it has a tilted wrist piece, which allows you to sort of have a weighted hang when he holds the weapon. The hands, once completed are fine, but it is just something to be aware of. It is not the best part of the kit. Now let's get into the weapons. And so what we have here is this scythe, which actually with all the add-ons might be even a halberd. But for the most part, it's actually a really cool design. But there is one flaw that stands out that I'd like to talk about, and that is this area here. As you can see, there is a gap. Now we have this really nicely coated metal shaft for the weapon, and there is a plastic one, but because of these side extensions on the inside here, it keeps us from closing. So note, you'll probably have to do a little bit of modification if you use this one, but there is a plastic version that looks like it's missing those extra tabs, which may fit better. So you have some options with that, though personally I prefer having the metallic one, so I'm going to mess with it. But with this version of the kit, you do get two, and with this, you get some effects parts. You get this piece here that attaches on that, which is pretty cool. You can use it in this mode or separated, which is another cool feature of this. All these parts come off to create additional smaller weapons. So we have this, which can be held easy enough. We have this top piece, which is a little bit harder for the hands I've assembled to hold, but you may be able to work with it some. This one also has an effects piece that slides on here. The problem with it is it does not stay on. So you can only use like an upward thrust to keep it on there. That being said, it's so cool it's included, but I probably won't be using it. With all that stuff removed, what we have left over is a nice looking scythe. And so this kind of has this whole Grim Reaper effect. And of course, the design this was based off of had a similar type of weapon. But these are pretty cool. The gap only being the major issue, and it seems the hands hold these up just fine. But now I have one more major accessory I'd like to go into. And so here we have the backpack. And what I want to talk about is a few things. One, the modular nature of this, what I think is a really interesting approach to how to assemble it, and then a bit of warning. Now, one note I'd like to talk about is that this comes with quite a few extra pieces. So you have sometimes 2 of something, which was great because as I was doing this review and trying to fit the backpack, I tried doing it without taking these arms off, and I broke this peg. Thankfully, I have the exact same part as an extra. So, of course, I'm going to be extra careful, and I learned my lesson, but I still have to watch as I do this. But what I had done is I had this on here, and there's these support arms that go on the sides, and I tried affixing these while they were attached, and I snapped the peg. So, what I would suggest is to add the backpack, which we can appreciate can be completely stripped down. You can put just these support arms on there, and they'll cover up the pegs, and we can leave the things out of here. In many of the stock photos, people have left these in there, and you have these bars, and it just doesn't look right to me, especially because you have this unfinished peg. If it had some sort of other core-looking end piece, sure, but it makes it look more like a piece of model kit. So what I suggest is we actually pull the whole backpack off, then we add these on here, and then reattach everything to have it ready for backpack mode versus trying to install these on there because these are really tight fitting and you just want to avoid doing any damage. And as you can see, with everything attached like so, we should be able to slide this on and these pegs as well, which will make this very stable. And as you can see, it fits pretty flush back there. I'm going to do the backpack in various components. So first, we're going to take the portion here that reminds you of a Stingray, and we're going to put the tabs in there. And we have to remember, even though this has lots of weight to it, it feels like a heavy-duty figure, we have to remember that the outside is still a plastic model kit, so we only want to use so much force. And we got to be careful with the other things. I'm just going to take it off. I think it's going to be an easier approach. Because, like I showed you, breaking stuff earlier, we don't want to break anything else. So there. Now that is pretty secure. So we can talk about articulation as we go. This section here has articulation in the middle, and then these joints have articulation at their connection, and of course the arms here as well. So I will admit, this was a bit tricky, especially since these joints here move, and so you have to keep getting things adjusted. But once you get in there, it feels pretty secure. But like I said, I would completely remove the backpack when doing it, just to prevent doing any damage, because you don't want to break these areas in here, and you don't want to break anything out here. So now, let's go ahead and get this attached, and then we can see this base configuration before we add more parts onto it. And one thing I have noticed is that these skirts right here pop off actually pretty easily. So that's going to happen quite a bit probably as you set up your display, because remember, this is not an action figure, even though, man, it has got some weight to it. But that looks pretty good. I like that backpack alone. I think that's pretty cool on its own. But of course, we're not done. So yeah, there's base mode. I've got him leaning forward a little bit because I think this is going to get back heavy as we go. Now we have these wing sections. So we have shown off the articulation there. We're also going to have articulation here. This joint as well. This joint. this joint, which also rotates. It's actually got 2 joints in here. And then this joint. So this alone is actually quite articulate, and it'd be really cool if you had something like this that could be changed out for legs. But what I wanted to put about this, and the reason I'm doing this in the modular fashion, oh, and there's actually this as well, and I pen line underneath there because I thought that had lots of nice detail. What I like is that we have all these things in here, all these great color separation of different parts. I think the gold in here looks great. Of course, the panel lining helps bring out like the rivets and stuff. And then we actually have some gold rivets we were able to insert. My only gripe about this is I wish this was more pieces so we could have had some sort of like gold in there or something as a shaft. But if that bothered most people, they could just paint it. But the skeletal form of this wing, I think, even without the additional parts, looks really good. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to secure this here. And we just work it in. You can always see the weight of it is actually pulling against the mounting point of the backpack. So now we're going to do the second one. And honestly, I kind of feel like I would rather do it this way than the official mode. And that's one of the things that's so cool about this kit, is that there's just so many options. You really could make it your own. But yeah, I think I really like that because you have all these pistons and sections here. It looks really cool. And I think as this thing's starting to get back heavy, I should bring out the stand. So here we can see the stand, and it's got a nice translucent plastic here. We have a locking mechanism here that allows you to adjust this. We can adjust the length of this, and we have another lock here that lets you adjust the angle of this. Now, when I posed it before, I'd rested it on the stand, but see, remove the backpack so you can see this. We have this area here that we can remove, and I might have to get a tool to take that out, but that is where this plugs in. It's actually going to go in the back here. As it turns out, it was actually easier just to take off this whole back piece to remove that. That said, whenever you do anything with this, just keep track of your thumbs. Just make sure if your thumb's not there, then it's time to look for it before you do anything else, because they just come off really easily. So, like I said, there's a locking mechanism on the side here. To get my thumb underneath it. So this goes up, and you can change your angle. So then we're going to slide this in here for a better, there we go. Because now that we're going to be putting this together, it's going to start getting back heavy. And of course, since we got a little flying going on, let's go ahead and adjust those feet in a way to show that he's hanging. All right, we got it all back together. And I just want to give you guys a shot of what it looks like with these wings on. And, you know, this mechanical wing, I just think looks so good. I think it's such a better option than putting on the other one. But it's all up to you. That's what's so cool about this, is you can set this up the way you like it. So we can add these on here. These actually have another point of articulation. This bends, and it will rotate on the peg. And they just go in here in this gold slot. And I'm kind of angling them in a way to where they sort of fit in between the other two, and it's almost like feathers. And that, I mean, that looks really good. Especially love how the separation is going on in this area. And then over here, I didn't really have to pen line this much. I think I just added the 2 specks there. But that looks really good. But wait, there's more. There's one final piece, which has another set of articulation. So these open up like claws, and then within them, there's another set of pieces that come out. So they're almost like pinchers or something. But however you want to imagine. And then within that, we have a barrel for our weapon. But there's 2 of these. And of course they can rotate as well. And they just go in the tip up here. And there's that with those installed. And they have more articulation because this can turn outward. So there's so many different things. Now, what I will say about this, and this is where I'm trying to be careful, this backpack doesn't stay on as great as I'd like. I feel like when you're going to pose these parts and adjust them, you really should take the backpack off and then do it because it's just going to keep popping off and you don't want to risk breaking anything. But I've showed you all the articulation in those wings, which gives you the ability to pose them as weapons or wings or take parts off of them. All in all, it is just a really cool design. And frankly, there's as much articulation in the backpack as there is in the mech itself. And for comparison, I just want to show another Gundam for scale. This is a Master Grade 1100 p-bandai Freedom 2.0. And as you can see, I mean, as far as detail goes, Zero Gravity really blows this out of the water. And while it is a great kit, and Bandai's all right, and probably a better kit to build, the Zero Gravity just is leagues above it. It is a metal build versus just being a master grade. My final verdict for this is it's probably one of my favorite things I've gotten this year. Even with the minor flaws with the hands and some stuff with the backpack and just, little nitpicks here and there, it's still my favorite thing I've bought this year. I love the design, I love the aesthetic, I love all the detail, I love all the options, the posability, the weight. There's just so much going for this, especially for the price. Now, the price might vary. I got mine at Show-Z store, and it was actually a pretty good price for this release. Though, with the demand, don't be surprised if you start seeing the price go up again, like with the first release. If I had to pick between the two, I would also say go with the second release just because you have the extra weapon and you have the really nice gold-plated plastic. So anyway, let us know in the comments below if this is worthy of your collection, like and subscribe, and we'll see you all next time.